Hey guys, this is Jay. Hope you're all having a good evening. I get up this morning, went out to the living room, opened the blinds up, fed the cats, and then grabbing filled my water back up, just come back to my room, and I walked out after my mom was up. And she said, "Well, I don't." She said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Same thing's always wrong." And she said, "What?" And I said, "I learned not to open my mouth anymore when I come out here." I said, "Every time I say something to you," I said, "you gotta get smarter with me or don't want to bother or anything else." And she said, "I didn't do that." I said, "The hell you don't." I said, "You do it every day." I said, "I'm tired of it." I said, "Between you and Tom and everybody," I said, "my own family," I said, "treats me like dog shit." And I said, "I'm tired of it." I said, "I should have saved the money up and just moved out of here." She said, "Well, if you want to go, go." That's what I mean. She don't care if I'm here or not. I told her, I said, you bitching at me all day yesterday." I said, "As soon as I told you I bought a battery for your car, that's the only time you smiled." I said, "And Jackie bitching at me for buying you a battery for your car." I said, "I can't win for losing." Told her the reason I bought you a battery is so you'd shut up about it. I says, every day I was taking bullshit from you for something I wasn't even here for. I said, your battery died while I was in the hospital, somehow it's my fault. So I paid for it to shut you up. So it's one less thing you can bitch at me about. It's starting, like I said, start getting to be a pain in the ass where you go to bed depressed and you wake up depressed because you know what the day is going to be anyway. So, and I'm already pissed off when I get up because I want to go outside. I want to do stuff and I can't even do that. So I told her if I could have worked on your car, I'd have been out there working on it, but I can't even get out in that garage on that step to work on my own stuff. So that's just, I don't know. And she said, "Well, I don't know when you think anybody gets smart with you." I said, "How about Jackie didn't bring the gun back yesterday?" And she said, "I'm tired of hearing about that gun." And I said, "I'm tired of you giving me my, or taking my shit and you giving my shit away every time I'm in a hospital." So I text my sister today and told her when she comes back tomorrow, make sure she brings the gun with her. I know what I told you, Melody, about just letting it go. You know, it's what my dad would tell me to do. But it's the only thing from him that I got to remembering by, and they took it. Well, pretty much they stole it. Because I got all the paperwork for it, and it's in me. Like I said, it was given to me. And my mom knows it was, and my sister knows it was. So, but I wrote her a text today just to bring back the gun with her tomorrow. And I know she's not going to, you know, I know, because my sister either don't answer your text, or she'll tell you, no, I didn't get the text. One of them playing them kind of games. You know, just going a day without getting yelled at to me is getting along with them. And I don't know. That's like, I asked her to order me stuff for salads because I can't eat much anything else. Salads, yogurt, jello, stuff like that. So she said, well, I'll order it. So her delivery come today, and I texted her and I said, my salad stuff come? And she said, no, I didn't order it yet. I said, what the hell you mean you didn't order it? I'm down to one thing of yogurt, Mom. I said, you have the money. I give you the money already. And she said, well, I ordered my TV dinners. And I said, oh, that's good. Mind yourself to order your stuff and the hell with me. And she did. She bought like 8 TV dinners and didn't get me shit. So I jumped on her about it. And finally, it come tonight. Just a while ago it come, and she said, your salad stuff here. And I said, well, that's good. Now it's too late to eat. I said, I'll eat a yogurt and I'm going to bed. And she said, well, that's up to you. Well, it wasn't up to me, it was up to you. If it had got here the same time your food did, I would have had time to eat. But I can't eat that late. So I said, then I get a call from this liver specialist today. And she says about the doctor referred me. She said they were in Altamont Springs. I said, where's that at? And she said, like, from where you are, about 2.5 hours. I said, there ain't nobody in their right mind gonna drive 2.5 hours there. I said, what doctor are you talking about? And she said, Rodriguez. I said, he dropped me. She said, why? And I said, because he didn't accept United Healthcare. And she said, oh, well, I'm sorry, then we can't see you. And she just hung up. So I wasn't going to see her anyway, getting drive no 2.5 hours. But then I get a phone call from Tom telling me he was sorry that he'll take what I pay him from now on. I said, Tom, that's going to be nothing. 10% of nothing is nothing. I said, you come here when we are supposed to work outside, supposed to mow the grass and weed whack. I said, you do a half-assed job. I said, all you do is half the work. I said, and then you just stop to where you think I don't see it. And I said, I'm not doing that anymore. And he said, well, I can try to help. I said, don't tell me you don't know how to mow grass. You've been mowing grass for how many years? I said, you just wanted to take a shortcut with me and take the money is all it was. And I said, I ain't playing them games. I said, I'm done with that shit too. I said, you take me to the hospital. I said, 5 minutes up the road shouldn't cost me $150. I said, so you were tearing me off and I had money that coming in here and just getting in my lockbox and taking what you want. I said, no more, you're done. I said, go find another idiot to work for. I said, because to stand there and watch you made my blood boil. I said, you cost me more stress than anything else to watch you work or not work. And meanwhile, I know you're going to charge me. And he just said, nothing else I can do. I said, no, nothing, sorry. I said, the wells run dry. And he said, all right. And I said, all right, bye. So hung up with him. It was a couple hours later after he went to work. D called me. He said, so you do know he's going to pick up that push mower and use it anytime he wants to. I said, you do know your ass sucks wind. I said, because I don't know what you're talking about. She said, well, you didn't give him enough money. The money he had to use to buy the push mower. I said, what the hell do you think the money was for, him? I said, he's the one that didn't put $100 on the card like I told him. I said, like I told you, he can't follow instructions. I said, he's a doofus. I said, I'm beginning to wonder if he even graduated the 3rd grade. She said, well, that's not fair. And I said, well, yes, it is. I said, I got him a $200 weed whacker, and you're threatening me he's going to come out and take a push mower? I said, try it. She said, well, I don't understand why you turned against him so hard. I said, Mike, D, all you got to do is look in my lockbox and you'll know why. Then look at my house. I said, there wasn't a damn thing done that I paid him for. I said, nothing at all. I said, all he'd do is stand around out there and walk around in circles. I said, no, I'm not paying for that. I said, like I said, he caused me more stress than anything I know. By the time I told him that's enough, forget it, my face was blood red. Because he'd just stand there at the end of waiting to get paid to do nothing. So, it is what it is, I guess. I don't know. Don't care anymore. I guess people gonna do that to me all the time. Like I said, I gotta get something squared away because, like I said, they're eating me up with money now with the insurance and everything else. And I got bills coming in left and right, left and right, left and right. And sorry about that. I got to put money out left and right, left and right, left and right. For stuff here just to keep people happy. Well, more or less to keep them off my ass and leave me alone for a while. So, see how that works out for a while. And she probably won't bring the gun back tomorrow. So, like I said, they took my trailer and run the hell out of it. And I never charged them a dime. And they have balls enough to come up and take my gun while I'm in the hospital. And like I said, my mother sides with her like she always did. And always will. Because my mother ended up throwing it back at me. You know, when your dad died, that became my gun. No, it didn't, because he wrote on a paper that he left the gun to me. Here's the paper. He gave it to me. So, I don't care. Like I said, I don't care anymore either. I kind of wish I didn't come home from the hospital. That's a shame. The girls jabbing you with needles all day long treated you better than your own family did. And they were hurting you physically. I'd rather be hurt physically than mentally abused every day of the week. So, alright guys, I'm gonna get going. Love you all. God bless. Please like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget the damn likey button betting. I'll see you on the flip side. Bye bye.